Hi everyone, I'm Scott Maddox, Director of Product Management at Telestream. I want to give you a quick demo today of a new product called IMF Producer for Vantage. With IMF Producer, users can leverage Adobe Premiere Pro on Mac or Windows using the IMF Producer Panel to easily create and edit IMF packages and to maintain consistency with the use of supplemental IMF packages. Vantage provides an automated system for converting the XML Premiere output into Photon-compatible IMF packages. The IMF Producer Panel in Premiere outputs a CPL with additional metadata that is processed by Vantage to create a full or partial IMF package with JPEG 2000 or ProRes media, multi-channel audio, and data packages like IMSC1 subtitles. Let's jump into Premiere and show how this works. Here we've created a project in Adobe Premiere Pro using elements from the Cosmos Laundromat Creative Commons short feature. My main sequence contains my textless essence, English subtitles, and my English stereo tracks. Once I've laid this out the way I want it, I'll open up the IMF Producer panel. This panel install comes with the IMF Producer and reads the timeline of the sequence selected. Here I can enter metadata for what will eventually become the IMF package. And down here you see that my asset list was populated with the elements that are in this sequence. If I had an HDR sidecar file, I could add that by clicking the HDR icon, and that would open up a file picker window for adding that metadata. And that may have come from an upstream process in Vantage where we extracted a metadata file from the Dolby Vision file. In this case, I don't have that file. The little paperclip icon besides each asset allows me to select which of these elements I want to include in the IMF package, and that'll be created once I export this into Vantage. The metadata fields include standard IMF package metadata and is user editable. I can choose from different content types with this dropdown. Once I have everything I want, and since this is likely my master package, I will make sure all the assets are selected and then export my XML file. And that'll be a slightly altered CPL file that's going to go into Vantage. I just click the export button, which brings up a save as dialog on Windows, and I can name and save my export. In most cases, this would be saved into a Vantage watch folder, which would initiate the package creation process. In this case, I'll save it to a temp folder, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. Before I do that, I want to show you how supplemental packages are handled using the IMF Producer panel. To create a supplemental package, I will just create a new sequence. Once I create the new sequence, then I'll simply copy over any elements from the master sequence that will not change for the supplemental package. In most cases, I'll be copying over the textless essence as it is, but changing the subtitles and audio tracks to something like an alternate language, for example. You'll note in the panel that the asset names change to match whatever assets are not part of this sequence. I can now edit my package metadata, choose supplemental from the type dropdown. Now, since this is a supplemental in which only the subtitle and audio files will change, then I deselect the textless essence, which simply means that a new package will be created that includes only the changed items, but the package itself will point back to the master. Now I'll export this as an XML and save it under a different name. Now let's take a look at these XML files. You can see here that this looks very close to being a CPL or composition playlist. We do add some additional metadata into this file that is used by Vantage, but this will eventually be converted to a proper CPL once it goes through Vantage's IMF packager action. One thing to note here is that this XML could have been created by a third party, like a media asset management system, and that could drive Vantage to produce packages without even having to use the NLE. Now remember, the second XML export I did was for the supplemental sequence in Premiere, in which only the subtitles and audio tracks will be processed. Let's take a look at that one. Again, it's close to being a standard CPL, but contains metadata that Vantage will use to identify this as a supplemental package related to the previous master package. Now let's switch over to Vantage, which is Telestream's automation and transcoding platform. Here I have a relatively simple workflow with a watch folder and the primary action for IMF Producer called IMF Construct. This action has one important job: to take the XML that we exported from Premiere, do any transcoding necessary, and construct a SMPTE and Photon compliant IMF package that can be delivered or checked further in Vantage with the VidChecker QC product. Here's my XML file, ready to drop into this watch folder. I could have put the XML directly into the watch folder, but that would be too fast to show in this demo. I will drag that file into my watch folder, which will kick off the IMF creation workflow. In this case, I don't need to do any transcoding, so it completes in just a few seconds. Once it's done, I can take a look at what we created. Here you can see that the IMF construct action created a full IMF package. Had this been my supplemental XML, it would create my supplemental package that would include pointers to the original textless master, resulting in a very lightweight package to transfer to distribution. Once I have my packages created in Vantage, I would either send them to distribution from the workflow or send them to the Telestream VidChecker QC product for validation. In this workflow, I've added the VidChecker action after the IMF packager action and a notify action to send an email with the VidChecker reports. This would result in the IMF package coming out of the IMF construct action into the VidChecker action. This action is set up to use an IMF DPP template, for example, and it will scan the package and write the results to two reports. Here, a general QC report and an XML DPP report. In this workflow, once these reports are ready, this next action will send the reports as attachments to an email address. This is but one example of configuring workflows for creation, validation, and distribution. I hope this demo was beneficial for seeing IMF Producer in action. Please let us know if you would like to see a more in-depth demonstration. Thank you.